This program is for students of English, ESL and DFL students, who must write a short essay for an English test like the IELTS exam. In the IELTS exam, students must write a short 250-word essay in about 45 minutes. So it is important to know how to write a good essay. This program will answer just two questions. What is an essay, and how can we write, or how can we answer a simple essay question? An essay is a form of persuasive writing used widely in schools and universities. The purpose of the essay is to persuade a reader to believe or appreciate the writer's opinion or point of view on a given subject. Generally, an essay has three stages. First of all, the writer presents their opinion or position on the given subject. Then they must support that position with a series of arguments before finally restating their position on the topic. It's important to remember that there are no right or wrong answers to an essay question. The English test really is assessing your ability to communicate your ideas clearly in English. But it is important that you make your position on the topic clear and develop your arguments logically to support that position, and that your final piece of writing is coherent and understandable. Let's look now at an essay question. Okay, so our essay question is: education should be free. To what extent do you agree or disagree? So the topic is free education, and you're asked to what extent or how much do you agree with this idea of free education. Now, as I said, there's no right or wrong answer. You could agree or disagree. You could say, yes, education should be free, or no, education should not be free. The user should pay. On this occasion, we're just going to agree with the proposition that education should be free and argue for free education. So, to begin with, we state our position. Education should be free. Then we need to develop arguments for free education. Why should education be free? Well, if education's free, everybody can access schooling. So they can learn to read and write. So they will become literate, and as a result, there will be more social equality and less disadvantage. The second argument: if education is free, then people can develop their skills, so they will become more effective and productive workers. And this is good for the economy. So a third argument for free education would be that if people can access schooling, they can understand each other's differences. They can understand each other's religious and cultural differences. So they will become more tolerant, and as a result there will be less social conflict, and there will be more social harmony. So there we have three arguments for free education: two social and one economic argument. Now let's move on and develop this plan into a proper essay. Okay, so Once we've made our plan, we're ready to write the essay, and we can try and extend our ideas a little bit more. So we can begin with, in my opinion, education should be free. There are a number of social and economic reasons for free education. First of all, free education means that everyone can access schools and library resources. There are no restrictions on access, regardless of whether you are rich or poor. Everyone will be able to develop their reading and writing skills, and as a result, society will become more equal. There will be less social disadvantage. Secondly, this is our economic reason. There are economic advantages to free education. If everyone can develop their skills and knowledge, they will become more productive workers. This is good for the country's economy, as it will make us more internationally competitive with other countries. Thirdly, free education means that there will be more social harmony, as people learn about each other's differences, including religious and cultural differences, they will become more tolerant. A more tolerant and understanding society means there will be less social conflict. In conclusion, the social and economic reasons or advantages of free education are overwhelming. If people can develop their knowledge and skills, they will become more tolerant, more productive, and society will become more egalitarian. Okay, so there you have it. Okay, so you probably noticed that the language I used in that essay was formal and academic, and perhaps at times a little bit difficult or technical. So it's something to keep in mind when you are preparing for an English test. It is important to develop your vocabulary so that you can express your ideas more freely and more easily. In the next program, I'm going to look at some of the language features of an essay and talk about some of the things you should not do in a test situation. This program is for English language students who are preparing for an English test like the IELTS. The focus of this program is the essay, which seems to present the most difficulty for students. In this program, I'm going to talk about some of the most common mistakes that students make when they write essays for an English test. I'll also talk a little about the form of the essay and some of the language features of the essay. In the last program, I wrote a short 5-paragraph essay with a 1-3-1 structure, with an introduction, 3 arguments and a conclusion. So the stages of this essay are marked on the left. The writer in the introduction gives their position statement. In the body of the essay, they express 3 arguments, and then in the conclusion or final stage, the writer restates their position. So we'll keep this in mind while looking at some of the most common mistakes that students make when writing English essays. The first mistake students make is writing without a clear position, that is, no position statement. In other words, the writer has read the question and probably not understood what the question was about, and proceeded to write their essay response without clearly expressing their position on the subject or issue. Let's look at an example. Should education be free? There are people who say that it should. There are others who say that it shouldn't. If it is free, then everyone can go to school. That's a positive result. But what if it isn't free? People have to pay, and if they have to pay, they may not have enough money to finish their schooling. But if it's free, then the people who provide schooling, the teachers and managers, will not make money. So therefore, education should not be free. It's not really fair if people who work in schools don't get paid. But then again, if people have to pay, maybe they won't come to school, and then the teachers will not get paid. So it won't matter. So should education be free? I say that it should be free, except where you have to pay, and then it should be like a business. Okay, that might seem a little crazy, but I have read essays like that, and if you write an essay like that in an English test, you will lose marks. As you can see, the problem here is that there is no clear position statement. There are, in fact, 2 or more conflicting position statements. Probably the next most common mistake is punctuation or a lack of punctuation. Here's an example. Try reading it. I won't go on. The solution is obvious. Learn a few punctuation rules and use them. This next problem is related to the punctuation problem, and that is no paragraphing. Paragraphs are like punctuation marks in an essay. They tell the reader when an argument is complete. Without paragraphing, an essay can be very difficult to read, and the development of arguments very difficult to follow. Let's look at an example. You can see that there are no paragraphs, and this makes it very difficult for the reader to know where an argument begins and ends. In an English test, you'll lose marks for this sort of thing. It's not difficult to leave a line between each paragraph so that your arguments are clearly separated and easy to follow. That's the solution here. Now let's take another look at the essay on free education, and just note the paragraphing in the essay, the separation between paragraphs, which makes it very easy for the reader or examiner to follow. Note the separation between the paragraphs, and note also the use of conjunctions highlighted here in pink. The listing conjunctions like firstly, secondly, thirdly and in conclusion are all very important in terms of giving some order to your arguments. The other conjunctions used in this essay are very important as well. If you're not familiar with conjunctions, it's something that you should learn about and know how to use them effectively. Okay, the next most common problem is vocabulary and grammar. Generally, if students don't have enough words and are not familiar with a range of sentence patterns, then they can produce fairly poor writing, which reflects their lack of grammar. Let's look at an example of this. If your writing is similar to this example, it is my best advice for you not to do the test until you have done more preparation to develop your basic writing skills. Word counting or repeating phrases in an essay is really an extension of the same problem. That is, the writer just doesn't have enough vocabulary. So what they do is repeat phrases to try to produce as many words as possible in a desperate attempt to increase their word count. So what the writer is trying to do is to produce 250 words so that they are not penalised for writing an under-length essay. If your writing is in this category, once again, you're not really ready to do an English test and you need to develop your vocabulary and writing skills. The last problem I'm going to talk about is the use of spoken language. Spoken English is really the wrong way or the wrong mode to express your ideas in an academic text like the essay. Academic writing should be quite formal, and spoken English is too informal, too familiar, too personal. Let's look at an example of this. Hey, I think education should be free. Don't you think so? If you think about it, it makes sense. First of all, if education is free, we can all go to school. That's cool. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're black or white, rich or poor, fat or thin or anything. We can all go. That's real democratic, like everyone is equal, get it? And everyone will be able to read and write and ask intelligent questions and say what they want to say. And another thing, if we can all get educated, we will all become smarter, and then we can do the same work twice as fast. Don't you think that'll make the world a better place? Okay, I won't read on, but I think you get the idea. The solution here is to use more informal, impersonal language. Avoid using the first person pronoun I, and try not to use the second person pronoun you too much. Remember, academic writing generally uses more complex noun phrases and technical nouns. The nouns and noun phrases have been highlighted in blue, and you can see some of the expressions, they are quite long noun phrases, like a number of social and economic reasons for free education, restrictions on access, and so on. I think you get the idea. Academic writing tends to use more technical and complex noun phrases. Generally speaking, academic writing uses more scientific language, more technical nouns and noun phrases, and in part this is to be more precise when expressing complex ideas. But additionally, the use of technical nouns and complex noun phrases sounds more authoritative and therefore is more persuasive. And remember, the purpose of an academic text like an essay is to persuade the reader to appreciate your point of view. Now the third type of essay is the discuss or discussion type of essay. These are not so common, but they are still important. Generally, you're required to discuss or talk about two sides of some issue, for and against, advantages, disadvantages, costs and benefits, X and Y, always two things. Here are some examples. Discuss the reasons for and against letting children play computer games. What are the advantages and disadvantages of mobile phones? Explain the costs and benefits of travel abroad. Healthcare should be free. Discuss the arguments for and against this proposition before giving your opinion. Most of these are fairly straightforward, but the last one, you must discuss both sides of the issue and then give your opinion at the end. Okay, let's look at the last question and plan a response. Okay, to begin with, we write a statement of the issue. The issue is health care should be free. And then we could note there are arguments for and against. Okay, arguments for free healthcare. Everyone can see a doctor, visit hospital for operations, so be cured of illnesses or receive treatment for special conditions. So this will improve the standard of health, standard of living amongst the population. Arguments against free healthcare. Well, the costs may be substantial. Some people say the user should pay, or they don't appreciate the service, and perhaps if healthcare is free, people might abuse the system, and therefore my opinion is that healthcare should be free and there should be an emphasis on preventative healthcare rather than curative, as this will be more cost effective. There's a general outline of a plan for the essay. I've probably given a little bit too much detail for a plan, but I wanted to make some of the ideas clearer. And the staging of this essay looks like this. In the introduction there's an issue statement. In the body of the essay, arguments for and against the issue, and then in the conclusion a restatement of the writer's position or a restatement of the issue. Okay, so now we have covered the three main types of essay: question and response. Argue, explain and discuss. So the most important thing to remember is to read the essay question and instructions carefully. Read them twice. Underline the key words. Be clear about what you must do. Then make a plan and write your essay.